Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, grocery bags cutting into her tired hands. At 32, she looked older than her years. The weight of raising 3 children alone had etched worry lines around her eyes and silver threads through her dark hair. Her youngest, Emma, was only 5, while the twins, Carlos and Miguel, had just turned 8. His silver hair was matted, and his breathing was shallow but steady. Sarah knelt beside him, a nursing assistant training kicking in as she checked his pulse and looked for obvious injuries. A deep gash on his forehead and what looked like a stab wound in his side painted a grim picture. Every dollar counted. Every decision carried the weight of 4 lives. The hallway light flickered as always, casting dancing shadows on the peeling wallpaper. But something was different tonight. The children were at her mother's for the night, a rare blessing that now seemed like divine intervention. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. She managed to get him inside her modest apartment, settling him on her worn sofa. A dark shape lay crumpled against her door, motionless and alarming. "And I need you to know, I'm not the criminal they're looking for." Every instinct told her to call 911, but something in his desperate gaze made her pause. She thought of her own struggles, the times when she'd needed help and found only closed doors and cold shoulders. Sarah's heart raced as she approached, grocery bags forgotten on the floor. This neighborhood wasn't known for good Samaritans, and getting involved with a bleeding stranger could bring trouble she couldn't afford. It was a man, probably in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit now torn and stained with blood. "Please," he whispered, his voice cultured despite his condition. "Don't call the police. I'm not who they think I am. Hey, can you hear me?" she whispered, glancing nervously down the hallway. The man's eyes fluttered open, striking blue eyes that seemed to focus on her with unexpected intensity. Sarah hesitated. "I don't have much," she said quietly, "but I can't leave you here to die." With considerable effort, she helped him to his feet. His weight nearly. The next morning brought new challenges Sarah hadn't anticipated. David's fever had spiked during the night, and she'd spent hours alternating between cold compresses and checking his vital signs. During his lucid moments, he insisted on one thing: "Don't trust anyone who comes looking for me. They'll lie about who I am." Men in dark suits stood nearby, their eyes scanning the building methodically. Her blood ran cold as she realized they were probably searching for David. Her children would be returning from their grandmother's house soon, and she still had no idea who this man really was or what kind of danger he might bring to her doorstep. "What did you tell them?" It was her mother, Rosa. They said they were police, but they didn't show proper identification. Carlos and Miguel were arguing about something while Emma's laugh echoed through the corridor. Panic seized her. She couldn't let them walk into whatever this was. "They wanted to know if you'd seen an injured man, said he was dangerous. I never meant to put you and your family in danger. I don't trust men who won't show badges properly. But Sarah, what's going on? Are you in trouble?" David drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally mumbling words in what sounded like Spanish and English mixed together. The men outside, some of them are dirty cops. Others are private contractors hired to silence me permanently. Sarah's anxiety peaked when she looked out her window and saw 2 black SUVs parked across the street. "Something I discovered in my investigation that relates directly to you, to your family. It's why I ended up here, at your door. It wasn't an accident, Sarah." She'd saved a man who was being hunted by corrupt officials, and now her family was potentially in their crosshairs. Her phone rang, making her jump. "Mia, there were some men here asking about you." Rosa's voice was tight with worry. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Nothing. Before Sarah could answer, she heard her children's voices in the hallway. "Mom, keep the kids there a little longer," Sarah whispered urgently. "Tell them I'm running errands. I'll explain later." She hung up and turned to find David's eyes open, alert and focused on her with an intensity that was both reassuring and unnerving. "They found me," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Sarah. The truth is complicated, but I need you to know I'm not the criminal they claim I am. I'm actually—" He paused, studying her face carefully. "I'm an investigative journalist. I've been working undercover for 2 years, and I uncovered something big. Something that powerful people will kill to keep secret." Sarah's world tilted on its axis as David's words sank in. "What do you mean it relates to my family? I don't understand." David reached into his jacket pocket with trembling hands and pulled out a battered manila envelope, stained with his blood. The first photo made her gasp. It showed a younger version of herself, maybe 18 years old, standing next to a man she didn't recognize. But what shocked her most was that she had no memory of this photo being taken. Before I tell you, you need to understand that everything you're about to learn will change your life forever. Some truths are too heavy to carry, but you deserve to know. 15 years ago, you were part of the Witness Protection Program. With growing dread, Sarah took the envelope. Inside were photographs, documents, and newspaper clippings. "I don't remember this," she whispered, her hands shaking. "Where did you get this?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "I had a brother?" Her entire life, her identity, her memories, even her children's father. Everything she thought she knew was built on lies. You witnessed something so horrific, so dangerous, that the authorities decided complete memory erasure was the only way to keep you safe. The man you remember as your husband, James Martinez, was an undercover federal agent assigned to monitor you. When you became pregnant with the twins, he was supposed to disappear, but he fell in love with you. The agency terminated him when he refused to abandon you. You testified against a cartel that was trafficking young women, including several of your friends. He was getting too close to exposing the corruption in the program. The same people who were hunting me killed him and made it look like an accident. Your testimony put 3 high-ranking cartel members in prison, but their organization has been hunting for you ever since. Sarah, your real name isn't Sarah Martinez. It's Sophie Restrepo. The envelope fell from her numb fingers, scattering its contents across the floor. That's impossible. I would remember ... Your memories were suppressed through a combination of trauma therapy and medication. The men in suits were moving closer to the building. Sarah sank into a chair, her mind reeling. Fragments of dreams and half-remembered nightmares suddenly took on new significance. The recurring dreams of running through unfamiliar streets, the inexplicable fear of certain sounds, the way Spanish words sometimes came to her lips without conscious thought. The man in the photo, David continued gently, is your brother, Roberto? My brother? David's expression grew somber. He was killed 2 years ago, trying to find you. That's when I got involved. Roberto contacted me because he learned that corrupt officials in the Witness Protection Program were selling information about protected witnesses to the very criminals they were supposed to be hiding from. The room spun around Sarah as she tried to process. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the apartment building's stairwell, each step bringing the hunters closer to their prey. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to absorb the earth-shattering revelations about her identity while simultaneously figuring out how to keep herself and David alive. "We need to get out of here," David whispered, struggling to stand despite his injuries. "They're coming up the stairs." Her nursing training had taught her to function under pressure, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment when her entire reality crumbled around her. Sarah grabbed the scattered documents from the floor, shoving them back into the envelope with trembling hands. "They know where you live now. They'll be watching. There's a fire escape in the back bedroom," she said, helping David to his feet. "But you can barely walk." Her children would be safe with her aunt, but she was now completely alone in this nightmare, except for a wounded stranger who claimed to know more about her life than she did herself. "Taking children to my sister's house in Queens." "Be careful, Mia. I'll manage." But Sarah, Sophia, you need to understand that once we leave here, there's no going back to your old life. As they made their way toward the back of the apartment, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Strange men asking neighbors about you. Relief and terror warred in Sarah's chest. I'm a single mother who works at a hospital cleaning bedpans. Your suppressed memories, they're still there, just buried. Under the right circumstances, they could come back. The sound of splintering wood echoed from the front door. They were inside the building now, probably picking locks or breaking down doors systematically. Before we go, you need to know one more thing. Sarah's hands shook as she gripped the metal rails, her fear of heights mixing with adrenaline and terror. Men's voices shouted commands, and heavy boots thundered across her living room floor. The reason they've been able to track protected witnesses so effectively, there is someone high up in the federal system who's been selling information. Someone who has access to all the witness files. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness of the alley, searching for their quarry. Everything rational told her to run in the opposite direction, to find the police and hope for the best. But the documents in the envelope, the photos of a life she couldn't remember, and the desperate sincerity in David's eyes convinced her that her only chance of protecting her family was to dive deeper into this nightmare. David paused at the bedroom window, his face pale with pain and exertion. Who? I don't know yet, but I have a lead. There's a meeting tomorrow night, a handoff of more witness information. If we can intercept it, we can expose the whole network and finally end this. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. You want me to help you with some kind of sting operation? I'm not a secret agent, David. You're also the only person who can identify the cartel members by sight, even if you don't remember it consciously. The apartment's front door exploded inward with a tremendous crash. Now we go, David hissed, pushing open the window. The fire escape was 24 hours later. Sarah found herself crouched behind a shipping container at the Brooklyn docks, watching David set up surveillance equipment with hands that still trembled slightly from his injuries. The revelation of her true identity had been churning in her mind all day. Fragments of suppressed memories began to surface like bubbles rising to the surface of dark water. She remembered flashes now, a young woman's terrified face. The sound of gunshots, the smell of diesel fuel mixed with fear. According to my source, they're selling information on 12 witnesses, including 2 families with children. But the memories were fragmented, like scenes from a movie she'd watched long ago. The meeting is supposed to happen at Pier 7 in 20 minutes, David whispered, adjusting the telephoto lens on his camera. Her mother had moved them to her sister's house. But Sarah knew that wouldn't keep them safe for long if these people were as connected as David claimed. Black sedan, right on time. Sarah's heart sank as she recognized the shorter man from somewhere, though she couldn't place exactly where. Sarah's blood ran cold. Children? The cartel has realized that targeting the witnesses' kids is more effective than going after the adults directly. Parents will do anything to protect their children. The weight of Emma, Carlos, and Miguel's safety pressed down on her like a physical burden. There, David pointed toward the end of the pier. 2 men emerged from the car, one tall and thin in an expensive overcoat, the other shorter and stockier, wearing the kind of suit that screamed federal agent. But getting this evidence to the right people is going to be the hard part. Morrison has friends throughout the system. She was 18 again, sitting in a sterile government office. And that same stocky man was across from her, promising that she'd be safe, that her new identity would protect her forever. Even from a distance, something about her made Sarah's skin crawl. Do you know him? David asked, noticing her reaction. The woman approaching the pier was Maria Vasquez, the cartel's enforcer, the one who had murdered Sarah's friends 15 years ago. The one whose testimony had sent 3 cartel leaders to prison. I may be. Something about him seems familiar, but I can't. Suddenly, another memory surfaced with startling clarity. Morrison didn't just sell witness information. He's been actively hunting us down. Agent Morrison, she whispered. He was my handler and witness protection. He's the one who arranged my new life, my new memories, but also the strength she'd shown as an 18-year-old who had stood up to killers to protect other innocent people. She remembered the person she'd been before they'd stolen her memories, before they'd made her forget her own brother, before they'd convinced her she was someone she wasn't. Morrison was pointing in their direction, and Maria was already moving toward their hiding spot with the fluid grace of a trained killer. David's camera clicked rapidly as the two men conducted their exchange, an envelope changing hands, probably containing the locations and new identities of a dozen families like hers. "We've got them," David said grimly. That's when Sarah noticed a third figure approaching from the shadows, a woman with long dark hair and the predatory stride of someone accustomed to violence. "David," she grabbed his arm. "That woman ... The memory hit her like a physical blow. "She's here for me," Sarah realized with crystal clarity. As if responding to her words, Maria Vasquez pulled out her phone and held it to her ear. A moment later, Morrison did the same. They're coordinating. Sarah stood up from behind the shipping container, her heart pounding but her mind crystal clear for the first time in 15 years. The returning memories had brought not just trauma, but also strength. The memory of a young woman who had risked everything to protect others. "Sarah, what are you doing?" David hissed, trying to pull her back down. "My name is Sofia Restrepo," she said firmly, "and I'm done hiding." David had no choice but to follow, camera still rolling, though he kept to the shadows to maintain their evidence. She walked out into the open, directly toward Maria Vasquez and Agent Morrison. "Maria," Sarah called out in Spanish, her voice carrying across the pier. "Me recuerdas? Do you remember me? The little girl who thought she could destroy us." The enforcer froze, her hand moving instinctively toward her concealed weapon. Morrison spun around, his face going white as he recognized the woman he'd spent over a decade trying to erase. "Sofia Restrepo," Maria said with a cold smile. "I was a witness to your crimes, and I'm still here. Protection? Like you protected my brother Roberto? I understand that you've murdered innocent families to cover up your crimes. Like you protected James, the father of my children. There are also copies of all David's evidence being delivered to federal prosecutors as we speak." "I was never a little girl," Sarah replied, continuing in Spanish. "But they won't find me or my children. Because unlike 15 years ago, I'm not running scared anymore." Morrison stepped forward, his federal credentials visible on his jacket. "Sofia, you need to come with me. For your own protection." Sarah laughed, the sound bitter and knowing. Sarah had called them 20 minutes ago, timing everything perfectly. The corrupt agent's facade cracked. "You don't understand the complexities. 17 officials had been arrested, and the entire program was being restructured from the ground up. I understand that you've been selling witness information to the people we were supposed to be protected from," David asked during one of his visits. "Getting your memories back? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss." They needed to see that sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest thing to do. And most importantly, a woman who had reclaimed not just her name, but her power to choose her own destiny. Enough talk. Her children were back with her, and while they were still adjusting to learning their mother's real name and history, they were safe. "You cost us millions of dollars and years of freedom. Time to pay that debt." From the shadows, David continued filming, capturing every word of Morrison's implicit confession. Instead, she held up her phone, its screen glowing in the darkness. "But I also remember who I really am. I remember that I'm someone who fights for what's right, who protects the innocent, who doesn't back down from bullies." Maria grew impatient with the conversation. Next to it was a new photo of Emma, Carlos, and Miguel, all smiling and unafraid. As Maria reached for her weapon, Sarah didn't flinch. "I'm live streaming this entire conversation to 5 news stations and the FBI's Internal Affairs Division. Morrison's face contorted with rage and desperation. "You have no idea what you've done. The people I work for will find new puppets," Sarah finished. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Maria made one last desperate lunge forward, but she was tackled by FBI agents who had been watching from the other side of the pier, legitimate agents that David had contacted through his journalism network. As Morrison was led away in handcuffs, he snarled at Sarah. "This isn't over. There are others. Then I'll be ready for them too," Sarah said calmly, "because I remember who I am now." 3 months later, Sarah sat in a different apartment in a different city, but this time she'd chosen the location herself. David had won a Pulitzer Prize for his expose of the witness protection corruption scandal. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah looked at a photo on her mantelpiece, one of the recovered pictures showing her and her brother Roberto together, both of them young and hopeful. "The memories hurt," she said honestly. "Remembering Roberto, remembering James, remembering everything I lost. It's painful every day." She paused, watching her children play in the next room.